Hello, and welcome to our Plano ISD interview panel training video. The purpose of this video is to explain your roles and responsibilities as a member of an interview panel and explain some of the basic do's and don'ts for the interviews. There are some rules that we have to follow because we want to hold ourselves to the highest standards and be compliant with fair and ethical practices. There are also some rules that we have to follow in order to ensure that our interview process is completely fair and doesn't ever discriminate against any of our applicants. Some of these rules are obvious, like you can't consider an applicant's race or gender when considering their qualifications for the job. But there are also some rules that are less obvious, like the fact that you can't ask about an applicant's kids, and the fact that you have to ask each candidate the exact same interview questions. This video will outline the basic guidelines, and by the end, you will be ready to participate on any Plano ISD interview panel. Let's start with the interview panel itself. Why do we interview with a panel instead of just one person? The reason is because we know that the best hires are interviewed and considered from multiple different perspectives. That's why we try to assemble a panel that includes people with diverse backgrounds and experiences. It is also important to cancel out any unconscious or implicit bias that any single person might bring with them into the interview, so that all candidates get an equal chance to be selected. You will be signing a confidentiality agreement in order to serve on an interview panel. It might seem really natural to tell a colleague, "We had interviews for the new counselor position yesterday. I think we got a really great candidate." But having that conversation is technically a violation of our candidate's right to confidentiality. Try to think of it from our candidate's perspective. If you were interviewing for a new job, you would probably appreciate knowing that your interview panel wasn't going to talk about how your interview went with any other people. Because of state and federal law, Plano ISD board policy, and simple common decency, we are committed to treating and considering all candidates equally, regardless of their race, color, religion, national origin, age, disability, genetic information, or gender, which includes gender identity and sexual orientation. This seems pretty obvious, but sometimes we violate these rules by accident, because sometimes it feels really natural to say things like, "Do you have any kids?" or "Where are you from?" or "When is your baby due?" In normal conversations, we ask things like this all the time, and it's totally fine. But we can't ask these questions in an interview, because all interview questions are designed to help us determine how qualified each candidate is to do this particular job, and are not supposed to gather any unrelated information that might bias our committee one way or the other. To make things slightly more confusing, they can talk about these things however and whenever they want. They are the candidate, so they can share anything. They might say something like, "I'm a mom, and that's why I love children," or "I was born in Iraq, so I understand how important public education is." And even if they bring up something like sexual identity or parenting or anything like that, we still can't talk about it or ask follow-up questions. The best way to handle this situation is not to pursue it and not make any note of it. You can't erase the information from your memory, but you can eliminate it as a discussion point and selection factor. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about the interview process itself. Each interview will follow the same basic outline, because we believe that consistency equals fairness. As members of the interview panel, the hiring manager might ask you to help draft some interview questions. Remember to use the official job description as well as the unique needs for specific positions to design fair and ethical questions. In order to maintain a structured interview process, the hiring manager will likely review interview expectations with you before the first interview. For example, they may assign each person a specific set of questions to ask, or they may choose to lead the question portion of the interview while everyone else takes notes on the interview rubric. After the interview questions, the panel and/or the hiring manager will spend a little time sharing information about the campus or department, the position, and anything else the candidate might need to know. You will probably give the candidate some time to ask clarifying questions if they have any. During this time, it is important to highlight what makes Plano ISD and your school or department in particular such a great place to work. Don't talk about being stressed or how you can't wait for the weekend. Those things, again, might be normal to say in casual conversation with friends, but we want to make a strong, positive first impression so that the best candidates are excited to join our team. After the candidate leaves, the interview panel will now finish up any notes and compare candidates. Speaking of notes, Remember that all the notes and rubrics that are used by an interview panel are subject to an open records request and must be retained by the district for 2 years. Keep your notes factual, objective, and precise. Don't write down anything that the candidate might say about race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, national origin, age, disability, or any of that stuff. Since all interview documents are subject to open records requests, please make sure you use blue or black ink. No pencils, please. Remember, all interview documents, including notes, rubrics, and questions, must remain in the interview room at all times for confidentiality. In addition, all of these documents will be turned in to the hiring manager after the interviews are complete. Lastly, let's go over a few do's and don'ts of interviewing. Don't prejudge a candidate. Don't compare or rank candidates until you have seen all the candidates. Watch out for the halo effect. This is a common cognitive bias where we see one really positive quality and then judge all their other qualities in the same positive light. Everybody has biases, whether they admit it or not. Try to be aware of your biases and try not to let those biases impact your decision. Don't trust your gut. Research has shown that this is not the best practice. Instead, base your decision on objective facts related to the candidate's qualifications and experiences. Be careful with your nonverbal communication. Try to be aware of your body language and facial expressions. Do read the following documents, which include a full list of do's and don'ts and some examples of legal versus illegal questions. Finally, we want to thank you sincerely. We know that you are busy and that serving on an interview committee is a big time commitment. But thanks to you and people like you, Plano is one of the best districts in Texas. We are great because we hire the best people like you. We couldn't do it without you. Good luck with your interviews. We hope you find the best person for the job.